It is a Friday here on Mic'd Up with Jake and Fulton. However, it's only Fulton Cast with you yet again because Jake is off today. Because he'll be off and he'll be back coming up on Monday. I really, I could add more reallys, but I should probably use other words. Really wish I could say that today is a Victory Friday. Unfortunately, the Kansas City Royals did not work with me on that. And they did not make this a Victory Friday because, in fact, the Royals lost their opening day matchup yesterday 2-0. Some of you heard it right here on 580 WIBW. And it was a bummer. I can't lie. As positive as I am about this team, can't lie. It was a real big bummer, but there were some good, some bad here. But no matter what, I think you were joining me on a lovely but windy day here in the capital city. The temperature is fantastic. We're low to mid 70s. I think we're at what? 74 right now. Oh, it's fantastic. That part's great. The fact that it's, 50 mile an hour wind gust. Well, Kansas, we can never have a perfect day of weather in the month of March. Can't we? But that's where the way things are today. It's a great day here on Mic'd Up. I thank you all for joining me this afternoon. As always, at this time, noon to 3. It should be a fun one today. We're obviously going to talk about the Royals losing their home opener. There is some good. I want to be very clear. There are some positive things we can take away from the Royals matchup against the Twins yesterday afternoon, in which they did lose 2-0. We will look at that. We'll look at the good and the bad from the game. What can we expect going forward into this weekend as they have the final two games of the series against Minnesota tomorrow and Sunday, because the Royals are off today. And we will also be able to look as well as what the Royals should be doing coming up the rest of this opening part of the schedule as well. We're going to take a little bit look at the Chiefs and their rookies and which guys do I think are going to take the biggest steps in year two. Who do we think can take the biggest step in year two? Who's going to be moving from from where they were to a level, to a higher level? Now, I want to preface this now, a little tease for it. It's the biggest jump. So if a guy's just going to be as great as he was in year one with a little bit of jump in year two, it could still be he might be the best overall player of that class, but it's not as big of a jump. I'm going to leave my guys who I think are going to take a big jump coming into year two for the Kansas City Chiefs. K-State had their pro day today. We're going to take a look at some of the news and notes coming out of there. Also just some news and notes from college football as a whole, including KU football pulling off a troll job. The world is funny. The internet is a hilarious place, and KU hired a new member of the coaching staff today that has sent KU and K-State Twitter all into a tizzy. We're going to look at that as well coming up in the 2 o'clock hour of today's show. Everyone loves the list today. Opening day best performances. There were a lot of historic performances across MLB yesterday for opening day. Not a lot were on the KC Royals side of things, but there were some great games and great performances yesterday as part of opening day. So today's list, baseball theme going. Got we'll have Kyle Manthe joining me for that list. It'll be Kyle's and I's favorite performances from opening day. I'm going to be joined by Craig Brown of Into the Fountains to talk some Royals at the bottom of this hour. And then at the bottom of the 1 o'clock hour, Kent Swanson will join me as well from the KC Sports Network as they take a look at the Chiefs, their upcoming draft, who they might target, what they might do with the rest of this offseason. As always, you can join in on the show on our text line, 785-272-9429. Give me your thoughts on opening day, the Chiefs, KU, K-State, how the weather treating you, how was your day overall, anything you want to talk about. The text line is wide open on this Friday, 785-272-9429. Then, as always, you can jump in on the comment section of our YouTube live stream. We are live on YouTube. As always, just go to youtube.com. Sports on 580 is the YouTube channel. Give us a subscribe if you haven't. We would appreciate it. And you can jump in and comment in the live chat as well. Where we begin today. Kansas City Royals lost to the Minnesota Twins 2-0 on opening day. And it sucked. There is no other way I can sugarcoat it. There is no other positive spin I can put on it. They lost 2-0 in a game in which they had 2 hits. That's not fun. I can't spin this any other way for y'all. But if we're going to look at this game as a whole, break down its pieces, there were some good and some bad. We're going to start with the good because I want to start us off on a positive foot with this game. The good, especially for me personally. Kyle Isbell looked good in center field. He defended it well, made some good plays out there in center, and he had the only extra base hit of the day. The only extra base hit of the day was Kyle Isbell rocketing a shot into the right center field gap that he legged out into a double. He also walked. Like, he got on base twice. It was a good day for Kyle Isbell, and any good day that we can point to for the young guys, for the young Bucks, is always a positive development, and we do need to look at that going forward. So Kyle Isbell looked good. That's a great sign. That was a good way for doing it. Zach Greinke looked even better than opening day last year. Zach Greinke last year on opening day had one strikeout. One. He had four in the game against Minnesota yesterday. He induced a lot of swings and misses yesterday. That's a good sign for Zach Greinke. He was not missing bats a lot last year. He was not inducing a lot of whiffs last year. He induced a lot yesterday afternoon. That's a very positive sign for him and just pitching well in this year with the Royals. And overall, just his sign and the fact that his stuff's there. I mean, Jake and I have talked about it. Zach Greinke is chasing 3,000 strikeouts. He's now, after the 4 strikeouts yesterday, 114 strikeouts away from 3,000. That's doable. That is, if Zach can average about 5 a start and can make about 30 starts, that's doable. That's attainable. That Zach can get there this year with the Royals and finish this season with 3,000 strikeouts. This is what Jake and I would both like and both want for him. He only had 70-some last year, so that was the worry for me, but it was also in a limited sample size with limited starts due to injury. And then, like I said, he didn't look great at inducing strikeouts last year, but game one, he's looking back to that old crafty Zach Greinke. That is a positive sign for this team going forward. For the bullpen, Carlos Hernandez and Jose Cuas looked great. Like, that's a great sign for those two guys making this roster out of camp, being in the bullpen. I know Jake's big on, you don't need a, bullpen doesn't matter when you're bad. Or at least his biggest thing is saves don't matter when you're going to lose a bunch of games, only going to win like 70 games, which I get his point to an extent. But it's a positive development that young guys that the Royals can put in the bullpen for many a year looked good. Carlos Hernandez's fastball was up to that 99-101 range that it was kind of missing last year. His fastball's back up. That's big for him to pair with a good breaking ball at about 90 miles an hour. Makes him deadly coming out of that bullpen. Jose Cuas's command looked good, and the spin on his pitches looked good. If those two can perform well out of the bullpen, that's a good sign for the Royals moving forward of this year and moving forward into the years down the line as well. So Jose Cuas and Carlos Hernandez looking good. That's a good sign as well. And then one of the more positive ones, Bobby Witt Jr. walked twice. He had 2 walks. And I know you're still like, Fulton, you're really going crazy for a guy getting 2 walks. My goodness. Does any of you know how many times last year Bobby Witt Jr. had multiple walks in a game? I'm not going to pause long enough because, I don't, this is not a great time for a call and response. It's kind of a rhetorical. Bobby Witt Jr. walked in multiple games last year 4 times. 4. I said going into the game yesterday, and I said this offseason, the biggest thing for Bobby Witt Jr. was he needed to improve his plate discipline. He needed to be able to draw walks. He needed not to chase and things like that. And yes, one of his strikeouts yesterday, he chased a pitch out of the zone. It was also against Pablo Lopez, who has great stuff. That's the other thing. Hope you all realize how good Pablo Lopez is watching that game yesterday. Pablo Lopez is good. Good. Doesn't excuse 2 hits, but he's a very good pitcher, and it's really hard to get something off of him. But Bobby Witt Jr. walked twice, including one. He had one take yesterday. It was a stone-cold take on a pitch just barely outside of the zone. That's a good sign for him going forward. That's something he needed to work on, because the more Bobby Witt Jr. can show plate discipline, the more he can show that he will take his walks and not be over-anxious and not chase, the more pitches he will then see in the zone, which then can lead to Bobby Witt Jr. actually doing more damage at the plate as well. So his growing plate discipline is a great sign to take from that game yesterday afternoon. That's the good. Those all things are the good. There was also some bad, and we have to talk about the bad in the interest of being fair. The bad, and I'm just going to put this at the forefront, they got 2 hits. 2. You ain't going to win a ball game with 2 hits. That's not ever going to happen. And it just wasn't great. Only really being able to string those things across, it makes things so incredibly difficult. And the worst part is, like, the Royals, it wasn't even as if I would say, like, some of it was, bad luck. because it really wasn't. They just could not really put good contact on the ball. And part of that was who they were facing. Part of it's just Pablo Lopez is that good. He is a very difficult guy to get hits off of and to perform well against. But you still have to find a way. But the fact of the matter is, Cat Lisbell had one hit at the bottom of the order, which was his double, and then Salvador Perez had a single, a little broken bat bloop single in the game as well. You would like other guys to perform better. You'd like MJ Melendez not to go 0 for 3, and boy, did he have a rough day at the plate. You know, Sal with his 1 for 4. Vinny going 0 for 3. His walk was nice, but not great. Franmil Reyes had a very, very forgettable day at the plate, going 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts. It's just not, Michael Massey going 0 for 4. Those are things that you wish didn't happen and could have performed a bit better. But they'll hopefully will get better and they'll figure things out there. I'll also add to that, just discussing the 2 hits part of it. And then in the addition to, they had 11 strikeouts as a team yesterday. That's just everyone but Kyle Lisbell and Edward Olivares striked out at least once. Byway Jr. had a strikeout. MJ struck out. Salvador Perez struck out. Vinny struck out. Franmil Reyes has 3 strikeouts. Massey struck out twice. Dozier struck out twice. That's brutal. That's brutal. You can't have that. You gotta. What is something we always talked about was a hallmark of those good Royals teams in 13 and 14 and 15, even 16 and 17. They didn't strike out. They put the ball in play. They made you defend. They made contact. And so that's frustrating to see this team have 11 strikeouts yesterday. That was difficult and unfortunate that's what they ended up doing yesterday. MJ had a really rough day at the plate. His one good appearance was his walk. Grounded into 2 double plays that erased some scoring opportunities, including one with the bases loaded that he grounded into a double play on. And then he had a strikeout as well that was just ill-timed and very brutal as well. For the bullpen, I said it most of yesterday. I want this team to not walk people. That was the most infuriating thing last year, was all the walks. Dylan Coleman's command issues still seem to be present. He started to figure out a little bit. Brian Sweeney came on for a mound visit, and Dylan Coleman then proceeded to throw a strike, which that's a departure from the Cal Eldred era. Last year, when Cal Eldred went to the mound visit, everyone all of a sudden turned in a prime Mike Trout. And Dylan Coleman got a mound visit and actually did something right. So that's positive for Brian Sweeney as pitching coach. His mound visits don't result in doubles being smacked on the very next pitch. But he was still a little wild. He still had issues throwing the ball in the strike zone and really trying to iron it out, because he had 2 walks in his 1 inning. Did a lot of run, which was nice. But he threw 22 pitches and only 9 were strikes. Like, you can't have that. You cannot have that as a big league pitcher. You have to find a way to get it done. Having, 13 of your 22 pitches be outside of the zone and only an inning of work, that's difficult. And I think Dylan can get better at it. I think he can figure it out, but it's just going to be tough for him going forward. And the other thing was Amir Garrett still can't seem to throw strikes. And I know Amir, only allowed the 1 run and settled down for a little bit, but it was still that same thing of him coming in and nothing being in the zone. I don't know what it is with Amir and all that problem. I don't hate. Matt Quatrero was asked about it after the game, about him going to Amir Garrett with 2 lefties. Lefty was supposed to be at the plate and lefty on deck. And then Rocco Baldelli, for the manager for the Twins, immediately, pinch hit 2 righties. And, Matt Quatrero was asked, did you think that was going to be a thing? Did you think that was a possibility? And he said, yeah, no, I knew they might have, but Amir has even splits. And so he felt good about Amir Garrett facing both. And I think that's fine as well. But the biggest thing for Garrett is just his walk rate. And it's always been a problem. Like, I don't want to act like this is just a new thing. His walk rate was 16% last year, 13% the year prior, 14% in 2019. For his career, it's 12.8%. Amir Garrett has always had a control problem out of the bullpen. I was hoping that the new pitching staff would help get it a little bit under control, but early, it seems like he's still just going to find and have those issues finding the strike zone and in finding it consistently. I have hope. I like Amir Garrett as a player and as a person. And when he has his command and it's on, he is a good pitcher. I just, hope over the time and over the way the season goes, he can find his way to be a bit more consistent in the strike zone as a whole. Speaking of walks, on the day, the Royals only walked 4 hitters. The Royals themselves, as a offense, walked 5 times. So the Royals walked more than they walked the opposing team. The Royals hitters walked more than what the Royals pitchers allowed. That's a positive sign. Zach Greinke, he has only 1 walk. Amir Garrett, 1 walk. 2 walks for Dylan Coleman was a bummer, but Jose Cuas and Carlos Hernandez did not walk anybody, including Jose Cuas striking out the side on 15 pitches. So there was good and there was bad. There was some give and there was some take. There's something to try and look forward to with this team going forward. The biggest thing is offense. I'm going to the game tomorrow afternoon. I hope some of you are also going to the game tomorrow afternoon at the K with Royals and Twins as Jordan Lyles takes on Sonny Gray. Offense would be nice. Runs being scored would be a positive. There is steps this team can take. But there were good things. The biggest thing I want to take away here is don't try to have massive doom and gloom after just one game. It is 1 game out of 162. There are 161 left to go. There's a lot of time for the Royals to try and fix some of their problems, but we also can't lie that there were some problems from opening day. But this is a process, a long process. And the fact that there were some highlights you can take from that game are important and should be recognized as such for this team going forward. Hopefully it's different when the weekend ends. Hopefully we come back here on Monday and we're talking about the Royals winning 2 in a row over the Twins and won the series. Who knows if they will? They should hopefully at least win at least 1 coming up this weekend, but we'll have to see when we come back and how the things go with the rest of these last 2 games against Minnesota coming up on Saturday and coming up on Sunday as well. We're going to take our first time out here on My Tip. Coming up next, we'll have this week's On Second Thought. Time for On Second Thought here on Mic'd Up, where usually Jake and I go back through things we've said this week and need a mulligan and need to figure it out and figure out what we're gonna try and do, what we need to fix. My On Second Thought, I didn't say this a bunch yesterday, but I've talked about it a lot earlier in the week. I really was pretty excited for Franmil Reyes as a Kansas City Royal. I was like, man, I thought he'd figured out some of his swing and miss stuff, and was going to be able to sit there, maybe not start the year with a bunch of home runs and 3 or 4, something like that, but it would look positive. He'd look a little different. I was wrong. I'm not going to make sweeping generalizations after one game, but it appears Franmil Reyes still has the swing and miss problem that he developed last year. Not fun. Not fun at all watching Franmil Reyes flounder at a plate appearance yesterday. And I mean, 3 strikeouts is bad, but how the 3 strikeouts came was also really, 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 really bad. I'm glad this isn't one of those times where I was proclaiming something strongly. So this is not I'm going to take back a big overall thought thing. But man, when I was like, man, Franmil Reyes in that spot, it's a good spot for him. It should feel good. It didn't go well at all. It was brutal. So that is going to be my On Second Thought for today. As always, we like to just make sure we let you know that we're not perfect. We are not perfect at all when it comes to things we say, and we're wrong actually quite often. Before we take a time out, we eventually get to Craig Brown at the bottom of this hour. I did want to bring up this news real quick because it broke, and we're going to talk about it more coming up with the 2 o'clock hour. But the Kansas Jayhawks have pulled off the ultimate troll job. Sean Snyder, the son of legendary K-State head coach Bill Snyder, as I'm sure all of you Wildcat fans know, Sean Snyder's been hired by KU to be the special assistant to the head coach for the football team. What that role entails, I do not know. We will have to see. The reactions, though, from KU and K-State Twitter have been some of my favorite things today, including just how funny this has been, of the thoughts of KU hiring Sean Snyder at all, and the thoughts of Sean Snyder accepting a job at KU, and then Brendan of 5A Sports Talk with the brilliant commenting joke of, man, maybe now we'll get to see Bill Snyder hanging out at the booth on a Saturday for a football game, and Bill Snyder's rocking KU gear. Wouldn't that be funny? Wouldn't that be great? I hope that happens. It'd be hilarious. But no, that's a very funny thing that happened today, and man, I don't know its purpose, but it is truly just some fantastic entertainment for the internet that Sean Snyder now works for the Kansas Jayhawks. We're going to take a time out here on Mike. When we come back, Craig Brown will join me to talk the Royals. Welcome back into Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW. Fulton Caster here with you, riding solo as Jake has the day off. He was off yesterday. He's off today. Jake will be back Monday. He has at least promised me such. We all, though, also all know what that turns into. But for now, I am running the asylum at this moment's notice. But also right now, I'm going to welcome in our good friend, Craig Brown, covers the Royals for Into the Fountains, a fantastic newsletter that you can find on Substack. Just Google Into the Fountains. You can find it. It's some great work. Craig's also does some great work for Baseball Prospectus. Craig just has covered baseball for forever. Does fantastic work doing it. Does some great work with the Royals. And Craig, I wish we could start this segment off with something positive, but I just got to ask, what were your thoughts watching the Royals lose 2-0 on opening day and only getting 2 hits?
Well, there were some positives, but yeah, the 2 hits really kind of stands out. The offense just didn't get anything going. The one good chance that they had on the afternoon with the bases loaded and in what was that, the 6th inning, ends on the 3-2-4 double play. So yeah, not a bright day for the offense. I thought Greinke, looked pretty good. Struck out a few batters, which you like to see. Quas was absolutely filthy in relief. But otherwise, yeah, not a lot to write home about yesterday.
Not really. And I started the show with the good over the bad. And so that's how we're going to start. We're going to start with the good. We're going to focus on the positive things to come from yesterday's game. Because you're right, Craig. There were some positive things. Let's start, weirdly enough, in the bullpen. Carlos Hernandez and Jose Cuas both looked great coming out of the pen for their first relief appearances this year. Let's start with Jose Cuas, who struck out the side on 15 pitches in his one relief appearance. Did you see anything different with Cuas in this appearance than what we saw last year? Or was this just simply a refinement of his stuff and he seems ready to go and showed that he deserved to win that final bullpen spot?
Yeah, I think he's always, with that delivery, the side arming, delivery, crossfire action with a slider that has a lot of sweep to it. He's always really, had the ability to do that. Has done that in spurts last year. I think what you'll look for from him is consistency. He got, all 3 strikeouts on the slider. They were chasing it. Got also a lot of swing and miss on the pitch just overall, not just on the 3 pitches that were the strikeout pitches. He when you work ahead in the count, you're gonna the advantage is tilting to the pitcher, and when he's got that weapon of a slider working for him, really biting like it did yesterday, then he's gonna have that kind of success.
The other big success out of the bullpen was Carlos Hernandez. This will be, as far as now, his first year as a full-time reliever dedicated exclusively to being in the bullpen. The velocity seemed to be back. He was touching one-on-one on a couple of those fastballs. The breaking balls seemed to have some of the sharp depth to it. What'd you make of Carlos Hernandez's first outing out of the bullpen, and what kind of a weapon do you think he can be out of the pen for Kansas City this year?
Yeah, I thought it was kind of interesting that he came in when he did. In the top of the ninth, as the last man out of that bullpen. I thought, I thought that the Royals would deploy him more as kind of like a stretched out reliever, a guy that would be capable of going, 2 innings maybe. But, even in the short doses of the single inning, like you said, with the fastball that's hitting 101, combined with that slider, again, getting plenty. Well, his thing in the past is he hasn't missed a lot of bats. He's got like really electric stuff, and it's kind of bizarre that he hasn't missed as many bats as you would think that he should. But he still can. With that kind of smoke that he was throwing, he's not going to get a lot of hard contact, and it's going to play to his advantage. So I think he is absolutely the kind of guy that the Royals are looking to as a weapon in that bullpen. I'm really interested to see how the team uses him specifically, because I think a lot of the other guys have pretty well defined roles. We know generally how they're going to pitch or where in the game they're going to pitch. Hernandez is kind of that wild card for me out of the bullpen. But I was impressed with what he was able to accomplish yesterday, and facing his 3 batters.
His usage is something I'm also going to be fascinated to see what the Royals do with going throughout the year and how they try to deploy Carlos Hernandez this season. For Zach Greinke, got the opening day start, looked pretty good. And the biggest thing I saw out of Zach Greinke is last year, missing bats and generating strikeouts was a thing that Zach Greinke struggled with. Only about 71, 73 strikeouts on the year in his limited time last season. He gets 4 on opening day, and even beyond the strikeouts, he's getting a lot more whiffs than he ever got on some batters from Minnesota last year. What'd you make of Zach Greinke's appearance? And because to me, none of his pitches looked different. It just seemed like he was getting more swings and misses. Did you see anything that could indicate why maybe he might have a bit more swing and miss in the stuff this year? Or is it just simply a return to the law of averages in that guys swing and miss at Greinke's stuff, and last year was an abnormality?
Well, I think that it's hard to say about, if last year was an abnormality or not. The strikeout rate was incredibly low for him. But, it's I mean, he's older, I mean, he's lost, the steam off of his fastball. So he has to rely and kind of reinvent himself as more of that crafty pitcher. What caught my eye yesterday, last year he threw, his four-seam fastball about 38, 39, 40% of the time. Yesterday he threw 7 four-seamers, all outing. That's 9% of his total pitches thrown. Curveball, slider, sinker. Those were the 3 primary pitches for him. The slider, again, was really working for him. That was the pitch that he generated the swings and misses on that were sweeping off the edges of the plate. The curveball he was keeping down in the zone. A couple of times he elevated those pitches, and those were the ones where the Twins made contact. He's got to live, down and on those edges in order to be successful. And again, for him, it's like everybody else, if he can get ahead of the batters, if he can pitch, and I think probably the pitch clock helps a guy like Greinke too, and the fact that he's calling his own pitches. So he's out there, he's really dictating the tempo. And, that plays to a guy like Greinke, who's always out there. We know that he's thinking, constantly. And for him to be doing that, I think it tilts the advantage even more to him than, in the recent past. And that's just a way to keep the hitters off balance. And, hopefully we'll see some more strikeouts from him. I feel like it's necessary for any kind of success that he's going to have this year. And then I've written about it. He's really close to 3,000 strikeouts in his career. There's, I think, 18 pitchers. He might be, if he hits that milestone, he would be the 19th in Major League history. That's a heck of an accomplishment. And it would be really, really cool to see that happen for Greinke in a Royals uniform towards the end of a career that, should see him get into the Hall of Fame. So, rooting for more strikeouts overall for him for a couple of reasons this year.
Jake has been very big on he wants Zach Greinke to get to his 3,000 strikeouts in the Royals uniform. So he's right there with you. I'm right there with you as well. Craig Brown is our guest here on Mic'd Up. Craig does some great work with Into the Fountains. It's a newsletter that Craig puts out covering the Royals. Just Google it. You'll find it on Substack. Subscribe to it. It's fantastic content delivered right to you all the time. Craig, let's move over to the offense here. And I want to start with a positive development on the offense. They walked 5 times as an entire 1 through 9, which I thought was a good sign. But more importantly, Bobby Witt Jr. drew 2 walks yesterday, including one plate appearance where he took some very close pitches off the edge. Now, inside of that, he also swung and missed and chased on a few pitches just off the edge as well. But what'd you make of Bobby Witt Jr.'s first game of this season? And really his plate discipline, what did you see in its development? Since, at least for me, that was the number one thing I wanted to see him develop on coming into this year was his plate discipline. So how'd you feel that at least looked in game 1?
Yeah, that's a huge step for him in his development to improve that pitch recognition, or at least the zone recognition. Let's put it that way. Not to chase so much, to be content with working that count, taking the walks, keeping the zone in the zone. And I thought that he did a really nice job. A couple of pitches were called strikes for him that were probably a little bit off the edge. He fouled off some pitches, to kind of hang in that at bat. He expanded a couple of times, a little bit too much, but for the most part, I thought his, discipline, absolutely a positive. If he's going to draw, walks, he's not going to get 2 walks every game, but it's something that you like to see in that opener that, hopefully that can, kind of set the tone for him a little bit. Because he is going to be an offensive weapon when he makes contact. I feel very strongly that what we saw from him last year, while not like overwhelmingly, great offensively, especially, for the expectations that were, put upon him. And then in relation to what we saw from some other rookies last year, but he's in a good position. He set a good foundation last year, and I think that we're going to see him kind of elevate a little bit more this year. I think we're going to see continued improvement, and if he can get on base, via the walk to help improve that part of his game, then you're talking about a superstar. You're talking about a guy at the top of the order that is really going to help propel this Royals offense.
For this Royals offense, again, we know only is able to muster the 2 hits in that first game against Minnesota. It's an offense that's going to be driven by young players. And we knew that coming into this season, that a lot of the guys who debuted last season were going to be expected to make jumps and perform coming up here in this season in 2023. Of all the young guys in the lineup, guys like Bobby Witt, MJ Melendez, Kyle Isbell, Errol Lavares, all those different young guys in the lineup yesterday. Was there anyone in particular that stood out to you in how they performed yesterday, both positively or negatively? Is there any one of those young guys in the lineup yesterday whose performance really stuck out to you in your mind?
Well, Kyle Isbell hitting down in the bottom of the order. Every time I would check in on him in spring training, it seemed like he was drawing a walk or just getting on base somehow. And, I thought, if he can kind of, maintain that, you're looking at a guy that is going to be a contributor. And yesterday he got a hit, got the double that kind of, ignited that rally. I pointed out also in the newsletter that I published right after the game, he got that big lead off the second base and really disrupted the flow of Lopez. And, with that pitch clock there, and, it just kind of seemed like Isbell got in Lopez's head just a little bit. So, that he was able to, kind of ignite that rally, so to speak, that didn't actually, come to fruition, but, he really kind of played a part in that. And then, the play in the outfield, he missed the ball on Buxton, diving for it. That was a triple, and eventually, Buxton comes around to score the first run, but made a couple other nifty grabs out there. He's going to be a plus defensively in center. I think we know that. The Royals have spoken very highly of his defense, and they really believe in him in center field. So if he can hit enough or get on base enough to, bring offensive value to the table too, he's a guy that I think, I'm going to watch a little bit closer to, and, maybe we're going to see some good things from him this year.
As the self-described leader of the Kyle Isbell fan club, I am always happy to see Kyle Isbell performing well out there. And I agree. I was impressed by some of the things he did. Looking forward to this weekend. Tomorrow's game in Jordan Lyles and Sonny Gray. There's things we'll want to see and things we want to see from the offensive side of things. But a veteran pitcher and Lyles on the mound, just hopefully he performs well. But what I want to get your thoughts on is Sunday, Brad Keller will make his first start of the year. Brad Keller against Joe Ryan, a guy that's really given the Royals some fits for Minnesota. For Brad Keller's first start coming up in this opening weekend, when we get to Sunday and Brad Keller makes that start and toes the rubber, what are you hoping to see out of Brad Keller in his first start of the year against Minnesota?
Well, all the talk in camp was about that curveball that he was showing, which he's never thrown in the regular season. So, I'm interested to see how that translates. It seems like every spring you hear about a pitcher, hey, this guy worked on this and he's going to break this one out, during the season. And then it kind of fizzles. So it'll be interesting to see, what Keller does with these new pitches, because he also, is working on a pitch that they're classifying as a sweeper now, as just kind of an extreme slider. So it'll be really interesting to see his pitch mix, I think, because, he's always been kind of that 2-pitch pitcher. So if he can add, a couple more wrinkles to that arsenal, he is a guy that, I think the expectations, from the last couple of years are kind of tempered around him. He's in his last year before he would hit the free agent market. There was talk over the winter, early on in the off season about the Royals not even tendering him a contract. So this could be it's a big moment in his career, and it's a big moment in his Royals career as well. So I think, it's going to be really interesting to track his pitches and his approach in the start coming up on Sunday. And hopefully we'll see some good things, some positives. We saw, a really solid year from him in 2020. It was a little bit fluky, though. It seems like. But he's, got some things, working for him that, if he can bring them to the forefront, can be a weapon in this rotation, which would, goodness knows the Royals need weapons in that rotation.
Lord knows they do truly need to find some weapons in this rotation. My final two questions for you, Craig. My two for the road. Salvador Perez was named captain for the Royals this year, fourth captain in just the team's history. Just what was your reaction when you heard that Salvador Perez got named captain, and how do you feel he fits that honor?
Well deserved. I mean, he is the face of this franchise. It's his team. He is a leader on and off the field for this club. I thought it was incredibly cool that they had the three former captains in George Brett, Frank White, Mike Sweeney in the clubhouse to present him with that jersey with the C on it. Just a really cool moment. Very well deserved.
I'm right there with you. I feel that was such a great honor for Salvin. It was a great moment overall. My final question here for you, Craig. First game with new rules, the pitch clock, the bigger bases, the shift restrictions. Just now that you've seen it in action in the regular season, which of those three rules did you really enjoy kind of seeing in action on opening day?
I mean, that pace of play. I mean, man, that game, in 2.5 hours, now granted it was a 2-0 game, but the Twins had traffic all day. There were 3 pitching changes in the middle of the inning, and the game moved right along. Eliminate that dead time. I think baseball's doing the right thing. They may, choose to refine the clock here or there a little bit. I think we'll figure out what works and what doesn't work. But I think overall it's a net positive. I think it's a net positive in a big, big way. All the games moved yesterday. It was a lot of action, a lot of fun to watch baseball.
That was my favorite thing. I at one point was a opponent of the pitch clock, but as I saw it did for times and everything else, I love it. That pace was fantastic yesterday. We wrapped up that game nice and quick. It was great, and I think it's going to be a great move for this game going forward. Craig, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon, my friend, and hopefully next time we get together, or just even as this weekend goes, there's some more wins on that scoreboard for the Royals, or at least a few runs for us to enjoy.
Well, they'll get going eventually, we hope. Thanks a lot.
That is Craig Brown of Into the Fountains. Always a fun thing chatting with Craig. And the offense will eventually get going for Kansas City. I'm with him on that. But for now, we have to just enjoy the fact that they got 2 hits and no runs on opening day. But hey, I still hold out hope they'll be better. I am also excited to see Brad Keller in his start on Sunday. What does that pitch mix look like? I think that's a good thing for Craig to note as well. And if anything, just win one game this weekend. That's all I ask. Win one game. Also because I told Jake they'd have 6 wins by like the 13th of April. And, well, we're not off to the hottest of starts with that bet. That'll do it here for the noon hour of my coming on 1 o'clock hour. We'll get to the Chiefs rookies. Time for hour number 2 here on Mic'd Up with Jake and Fulton, but it's just Fulton today. I want to thank Craig Brown for joining me at the bottom of the noon hour to chat all things Royals. It's always fun to chat with Craig. Got a lot of Chiefs to get to here in hour number 2 of the show. This will be a Chiefs-centric hour of the program. We're going to take a look at the Chiefs rookies and who I think could step up the most in year 2 and what we'll kind of break down of what that great rookie class from last year could all shape and morph into. We have Everyone Loves the List. Kyle is going to join me for that list today. Our top opening day performances from yesterday. I don't know if either of us are going to have a Royal on the list, but there were some really cool performances from yesterday that had some really historical implications for how good some players did. We'll get to that and kind of wrap up relishing how great opening day was yesterday afternoon as well. And then we'll finish things off this hour is Kent Swanson of the KC Sports Network. He's going to join me at the bottom of the hour to chat all things Chiefs and maybe a little Royals, even some KU talk as well with Kent. As always, you can join in on the conversation on our text line, 785-272-9429. Or you can jump into the comment section on the YouTube live feed. As always, go to youtube.com. Sports on 580's YouTube channel. Just type that into the little search bar. We'll pop up. You'll see our little logo we always have. Subscribe if you haven't. We very much appreciate it. Makes the YouTube algorithm like us more. And then you can jump in, watch the live stream, and comment as you will. But to begin this hour of the show, I took a look at every rookie the Chiefs had last year. Isaiah Pacheco, Trent McDuffie, George Karlaftis, Sky Moore, Brian Cook, Leo Chanel, Joshua Williams, Darian Kennard, Jalen Watson, and Najee Johnson. That is the 10 draft picks. I want to make sure I did my math right. I did do my math right. That's 10. Bonus points for me. I actually did math right on the first try. Those are the 10 draft picks that the Chiefs had last year. And all 10 made the roster, which is astounding when all 10 of your draft picks make the roster, including 3 7th-round picks in Pacheco, Johnson, and Watson. They all had different roles last year, as we all know. Isaiah Pacheco eventually took the starting running back job. Trent McDuffie was a starting corner. George Karlaftis was a starter on the defensive line. Jalen Watson moved into more starting and rotation roles in the defensive backfield. Same with Joshua Williams. Sky Moore did what he could as a wide receiver. Brian Cook worked his way to more of third safety rotation as the year went. And then Darian Kennard and Najee Johnson were kind of guys who didn't really get to play that much. Darian Kennard kind of rode the bench as a backup offensive lineman, and Najee Johnson was a special teamer, one of the core special teamers. So I wanted to look at all 10 of these guys, which can be considered one of the more, I'm going to use the word historic, but it's not, I don't think it's a great one for this context, but I just don't have a better one right now because it's so rare for a team to draft 10 players, and all 10 players are on the 53-man roster all year. And Kennard was probably the one who contributed the least, but even then, he still made the roster. He's going to have to stay on the roster. Like, that's important. And so all these guys are going to be part of the roster coming up next year. And so it's going to be interesting to see what their roles are. And so I wanted to break down what their roles could be and what their roles could morph into. So obviously, we have the guys that you can pencil in. These are your starters. These are guys amongst this group that are going to be day one starters next season, or essentially day one starters next season. Obviously, one of your starters is Isaiah Pacheco. He will be your starting running back. I don't foresee that changing unless Clyde Edwards-Helaire or even if Jerick McKinnon gets re-signed or if just something crazy happens that would make him lose the starting running back job. I don't foresee that happening. I think he's got that job locked down for the next several years, and I think it's a good job for him to have for the next several years because of just how well Isaiah Pacheco did with that job last season, taking it over. Another one who's going to be a starter for sure next year is George Karlaftis. George Karlaftis, of course, going to be an impact player on the edge for the Chiefs coming up on this Chiefs season and how well they're going to play. We've talked about a lot that Karlaftis with how he played last year well. He came on strong as the year went along. Now he's going to be one of those starting guys along the edge, and he's going to be trying to figuring out who is going to be pairing up with him. As of now, Charles Omenihu will probably be the other starting defensive edge, but we'll see how the rotations will work out for Steve Spagnuolo. Another starter that's for sure going to be a member of the Chiefs starting 11 on either offense or defense, Trent McDuffie. McDuffie and L'Jarius Sneed are your top two corners. Easy. That's what they are. They are your top two corners in the Chiefs defensive backfield, and Trent McDuffie did a great job last year showing he could potentially be a shutdown corner in the NFL. I've really liked Trent McDuffie coming out of Washington and what he can do for this team. And seeing him on film, seeing him on the field, I really think Trent McDuffie has a chance to be a very, very special corner in the NFL, going forward. I really think he can do it. I think it'll be something he can perform well as and something he can do very well going forward. So Trent McDuffie is going to be one of those starters as well. I'm going to put him in the starter camp, though he is the third corner, but that is Jaylen Watson as of now. Jaylen Watson was the third corner last year, a 7th-round pick who rotated into some high-level snaps and high-level cornerback duties. He did that very well last year. Of course, had that great pick 6 against the Chargers in week 2. They got that touchdown for 99 yards. Had some great performances in the game as well, and just did such a good job for what, the Chiefs needed him to do. And he did it well and did it confidently, and that's the important part of how this team needs to go going forward. And it's nice to know that 2 of your top three corners are rookies. We'll see what the team does going forward, but that's what it is as of now. Another guy you can technically pencil in as a starter, though, again, defining starter can be a little bit difficult. Sky Moore. Sky Moore is going to be asked to do a lot next year for this Chiefs team. Andy Reid's talked about it. He wants Moore to step up. Moore, as of right now, at the worst, is wide receiver 3. And honestly, maybe has to task more wide receiver 2 things. I wouldn't be surprised if what the Chiefs ask Moore and Tony to do is be the top 2 receivers, with Marquez Valdez-Scantling being more of a wide receiver 3 again, which is what he's really accustomed to over longer stretches of his career. The Chiefs want Moore to take a step forward. I think Sky Moore can take a step forward because he looked so... He had flashes. I think that's that's actually the better way to put it. He had flashes last year and flashes of showing what he can do. He has some refinement to work on his route running and reading and kind of getting familiar with what the Chiefs want and what Patrick Mahomes wants, but he still has shown those skills that are very good and very important for this Chiefs team. I think he's going to do a lot of great things for this team going forward. Our other starter for the Chiefs as of now, Brian Cook. Brian Cook's probably your starting safety alongside Justin Reed. Now, there's still some things to figure out. We'll see if that's officially what the Chiefs do going forward. But Brian Cook is probably your other starting safety to replace Juan Thornhill. I don't know how they're going to try and work that, of which of either Cook or Reed would be the free safety, the one tasked with roaming deep. Cook didn't do that a lot last year, but did do it well in some limited snaps. He also had some snafus, but he also, when you think about the playoffs where Cook tipped the ball to Joshua Williams for a great interception. There's some good looks in the preseason that he did. He did some good work down the field as the season went on. So I think Brian Cook could actually do some good work as the deep safety for this team going forward. That out of those 10 players that Chiefs drafted last year, 10, 6, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 of those guys in their second years in the NFL will likely be starters or playing something akin to starter snaps. That is, one, a testament to how great the draft class was for the Kansas City Chiefs last year. That out of that draft class, you are looking at getting 6 starters in their second year, and all of them probably being able to be a starter at a fairly decent level. Isaiah Pacheco is a very good running back, good starting running back to have. Carl Loftus did some great work on the edge to wrap up the season. McDuffie, a fantastic corner who should only get better. And then Watson, Moore, and Cook all showed flashes of being really good players. For them, it's just finding consistency, and I think they can in year 2. And then you look more at these guys. Which of these guys might be more impact bench players? And that is namely Jalen Watson, who will probably be your third corner, which, that he can kind of fit on both starters and bench as the third corner, seeing what he's going to do. But then more importantly, Joshua Williams. Joshua Williams, D2 reppin', as we like to say here on this program, D2 reppin' out of Fayetteville State. He looked good. The best example of how great Joshua Williams could be and what I think is a pretty good ceiling for him and finding some consistency as a corner in the NFL is the Cincinnati game in the playoffs. L'Jarius Sneed goes down 5 snaps into the game roughly, and Joshua Williams, Jalen Watson, and Trent McDuffie are your corners that game. And Joshua Williams did an admirable job, was tasked with covering some guys on the outside a lot. He did some great work in that game. Joshua Williams might be a rotational piece, but he's going to be a very good rotational piece for this Chiefs team going forward. Another big bench piece from this Chiefs draft class, Leo Chenal. I'm excited to see what Leo Chenal is tasked with doing in year 2. We saw him play a lot more in the Super Bowl. I think against teams that run the ball heavily, that we might see a lot of Leo Chenal to take advantage of his innate talents getting downhill and stopping the run. But year 2, Nick Bolton made a good stride and trying to be better as a pass defender. He's still got some work to do, but he still made those strides year 1 to year 2. Can Leo Chenal make those strides year 1 to year 2 and try and perform better for this Chiefs team and maybe find a way to get even on the field a lot more? I don't know, but it'd be nice to see what, it's going to be for this Chiefs team going forward of what they're going to try and do. But Williams and Chenal are just going to be some very interesting bench pieces for this team going forward, and seeing what this team can do and seeing what they can try and figure out. Those are the two probably primarily bench pieces that we're going to see from the Chiefs. And then we have a third category, which is one, special teamers and guys that are going to be core special teamers again for the Chiefs. And then I'm just bluntly labeling it as I don't know. And I don't know what they're going to be asked to do next season. Najee Johnson fits in here. He was the 7th round pick for the Chiefs, a safety at a Marshall. He was a good special teamer, and you don't often talk about special teamers and some of the things they can do. It can kind of get hidden under the rug a little bit, and you don't really realize, some of the things that they can figure out and that they're able to do. But Najee Johnson was able to contribute very well for the Chiefs last season, found ways to be a contributor in a core spot of the team, became, one of Dave Toe's favorite young guys, and I think he'll do a lot of great work on special teams. It might even get some run on the field as a, deep bench safety if needed going forward, but we'll see what happens to Najee Johnson. And then the one wild card out of the 10 is Darian Kinnard. What do the Chiefs do with him in year 2? Does he move inside to guard? Is he kept working at right tackle? There's a right tackle job to win. Does Darian Kinnard win the right tackle job? He is the number one person that I'm fascinated by for the Chiefs this offseason, because I thought when Kinnard was drafted in the 5th round, that was a steal for Kansas City. I really did. I liked Darian Kinnard coming out of Kentucky. I liked him in the draft. I thought he would get drafted higher. The fact that they were able to get him in the 5th round, I felt was a bit of a steal. But things never really came together for Darian Kinnard last season. I'm intrigued to see what he does in year 2. How does he develop? What does he work on? Where do the Chiefs put him? Because they need offensive line depth. They're turning over parts of the depth of this offensive line. Where does Darian Kinnard fit into that? I think will be fascinating. And then, like I said, there's a right tackle job that's wide open. Like, Lucas Niang is the guy we're all kind of assuming might win the job, and he would still be my clubhouse leader to win the job, would be Lucas Niang, because I think if healthy, he has the most reps at right tackle, and I think performed actually fairly admirably in the time he's been asked to play right tackle. But, Do you kick Prince Tega Inogo over to the right side? See how he can do it. Darian Kennard is a guy I think is going to be in the mix to try and win that job. The Chiefs might also draft an offensive lineman to try and win that job. There's so many interesting things they might do on the outside that I'm very fascinated by what Darian Kennard can do. But this is fascinating to me what the Chiefs are going to be able to do with these rookies and these young guys coming into year 2. Because now they're good rookies. They're going to be second-year players. But out of those 10, 6 of them are going to be starters, including some guys taking some big steps in year 2. Brian Cook's going to have to do a lot more in year 2, and I think he can do it. Sky Moore would be my guy, who you're going to see a tremendous leap from year 1 to year 2. I think another offseason under this playbook with Andy Reid, another offseason to learn and train with Patrick Mahomes and company. I really think that Sky Moore is going to be able to take those leaps, become that guy that we saw all the great flashes for out of Western Michigan, and showed a lot of great talent and a lot of great skills. He'd be my guy I think is going to take the biggest jump out of all of these guys to take a step. But 6 starters. You got 6 starters, and they're not starters in the line of, sometimes you could say, well, yeah, another team's draft class, they got a bunch of starters out of it. But sometimes it's not because of their own talent, but because of other reasons. The fact of the matter is, all 6 of the guys I put in the starters tier, Pacheco, Karlaftis, McDuffie, Watson, Moore, Cook, majority of them are there because of their own talent levels. And even so, we could argue, go back and forth on Brian Cook, is he a starter because of his talent level? Is he going to be a starter because Juan Thornhill just left and they want to pay Juan Thornhill? Fact of the matter is, the Chiefs actively chose to not really try and retain Juan Thornhill because of what they felt like they had on the roster and what they liked seeing from this team and from Brian Cook and everything like that. So that's, all those positive signs is all 6 of those guys gave the Chiefs a comfortability level that they can be starters on this team and not have a drop-off from other things the Chiefs could do at that position. That is just so impressive and so remarkable for these players. And even your bench guys of, Josh Williams and Leo Chanel, they're niche players, they're role players, but they fill those roles incredibly well, and they are able to perform when they are put on the field. They're not being put on the field just because the Chiefs have no other option. They're being put on the field at those times because they can contribute and can play well in those specific situations. And I'm looking forward to see what they can do for the Chiefs coming up as well. And then Najee Johnson and Darian Kennard, what do they do in year 2? Najee Johnson, if all Najee Johnson ever becomes in his first 4 years in Kansas City is a core special teamer, that's a win. To get anything out of a 7th round pick is a win. 7th round picks at their core are lottery tickets. They are just, I'm taking a guy and let's throw my hands up in the air and see what happens. Well, if what you get is a guy who for 4 years can contribute to your team, even if just that contribution is on the special team side of the ball, that is an important way to do it. And that's why I like seeing what Najee Johnson's doing. And then I am fascinated. And I mean, I am fascinated by what the Chiefs will do with Darian Kennard in year 2, what he tries to do in year 2, and how he tries to perform. I'm intrigued. I really hope it's going to be something good for Darian Kennard, and maybe he pushes for that right tackle spot, even if he doesn't win it. He shows that he can try and do it and be a bit more ingrained as a backup piece of this offensive line for the Chiefs. I don't know, because they have some options, because also for Darian Kennard, depending on what happens at right tackle this year, it might be an open job in 2024 as well that Kennard could try and win. But all that starts, at least for Kennard specifically, seeing what he can show here in year 2 for the Chiefs, in year 2 in Kansas City. But overall, I love looking back on those 10 dudes the Chiefs drafted last year, and all of them in some way, finding a way to try to be impactful. It's a win. It is an incredible win for the Chiefs going forward. It makes me excited to see what they try and pull off in the draft coming up this year, coming up in about a month or so at the NFL draft. It's going to be great. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I think it's going to be an enjoyable time to see what this team does going forward. We're going to take a timeout. When we come back, it's time for Everyone Loves a List. Time for everyone who loves the list here on Mic'd Up with Jake and Fulton. As for the list today, with Jake being gone, I'm bringing my good man, Kyle Manthe, to help me out with the list today. Kyle, our list, our favorite performances or the best performances from opening day. There were some good ones. Some guys really had some good performances on opening day. Kyle, what is your number 4 best performance from opening day?
Number 4 on my list goes to Dylan Cease from the Chicago White Sox, and that's because he's the only pitcher to pitch more than 6 innings on opening day, which is just kind of symbolic of baseball, but he gave up only 1 earned run, had 10 strikeouts, so shout out to Dylan.
I love that we say Dylan is the one guy to go past 6 innings, and he got 6 1/3. But no, that's my number 4 as well. Dylan Cease struck out 10 Astros, the defending champions, was carving them up all night. Dylan Cease just looked great. He looked fantastic. He had such a great game. No, I'm right there with you. Dylan Cease, a great performance, is my number 4 as well.
Number 3 for me, I don't like to shout out the Yankees, but Garrett Cole did pretty well.
That's fair.
6 innings, 11 strikeouts, only 2 walks. And unlike Shohei Ohtani, who actually had like the exact same stat line, he got a win.
That's why wins and losses, useless stat.
Very useless, but also the Angels deserve to rot.
The Angels did the Angels again. Number 3 for me, shout out our good man Dan from 580 Sports Talk. CJ Cron, 4 for 5, 2 home runs, 5 RBI. What a day for CJ Cron on opening day. He gets a shout out from me.
He's going to get one from me, too. He's number 2 on my list. Anytime you hit 2 home runs, and that's how many letters he also has in his first name. So that's what I can provide on CJ Cron. He had a good day.
He did. He very much did. Number 2 for me, Shohei Ohtani, 6 shutout innings, 10 strikeouts, and he got another hit at the plate. Shohei doing Shohei things. It is a crime that he did not get a win yesterday. Absolute crime. Darn you, Angels.
Number 1 for me, it's Adley Rutschman.
It has to be.
He had more than double the amount of hits as the Royals just by himself. He had 5.
There were 2 5-for-5 hit games yesterday. George Springer went 5 for 6, but Adley's 5 for 5 for me is more impressive because he got on base in all 6 at bats. He went 5 for 5 with a walk, drove in 4 runs, hit a home run. Adley Rutschman, man, he is so incredibly good, so incredibly talented. It's easy to make him the number 1 performance on opening day. There were some other great ones there, but man, Adley Rutschman, 5 for 5 with 4 RBI. He had the walk. He's going to be a great catcher in this game going forward. But shout out our man, Adley Rutschman. Great player, drafted 1 spot ahead of Bobby Witt Jr. We're going to take a time out here on Mic'd Up. When we come back, Kent Swanson will join me to chat all things Chiefs. Welcome back into Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW. As always with today's Everyone's Loves a List topic being favorite opening day performances. If you have a thought on someone you thought had a great opening day yesterday, please let us know on our text line, 785-272-9429, or jump into the live comment section of our YouTube streams. Go to youtube.com. Sports on 580's the YouTube channel. Subscribe if you haven't. We would appreciate it. And then you can jump in the comments as well. To kick off this bottom hour of the show, we are now joined by Kent Swanson, covers the Chiefs for the Kansas City Sports Network. They do some great work over there at the KC Sports Network. I cannot recommend it enough, including, as we are now hitting draft season, they're going to have their KC Sports Network draft guide. It's a great product every year, in-depth coverage. It teaches me more about the draft every single year. Kent, thank you for coming on, my man, and are you as excited as I have to imagine you and some of the other guys at KC Sports Network are as draft season is fully upon us with the draft in Kansas City just about 4 weeks away?
Oh man, I can't wait. This is gonna be so much fun. It's so cool that we're gonna get to see so many people come into Kansas City, obviously, and get to see how cool the area is. But this is also a really fun draft. This is a really exciting draft. It's gonna be fun that the Chiefs are picking at the end of each round. But yeah, I'm really looking forward. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
I'm right with you, and I think it truly is the best part is it's in Kansas City this year. People are going to get to come to Kansas City, experience what the city is all about, and really get to see why we all love Kansas City in the area of ourselves. You speak about the draft being interesting this year, and a lot of our thought that is going to be centered around that and what the Chiefs are going to end up doing. But when you just look at this draft from a bird's eye view, looking at all the positions, all the players, everything like that, what's what you call like the number one, number two, just the biggest things that intrigues you the most about this year's draft class, whether it be specific position groups, specific players? What intrigues you the most about the 2023 draft class for the NFL?
I think it's specifically if you're looking at the Chiefs, I think it's the wide receiver position. And, it's just because when I look at this draft, I look at the roster composition of the Chiefs right now, they need a receiver. They need additional help in that receiver room in some capacity. And it feels like, the more and more we get into this class, that day one, receiver is probably a good bet for them. What's fascinating though is how the league is going to perceive the first tier of wide receivers, which is what I kind of consider Jackson Smith and Jigba, Quentin Johnston, Jordan Addison, and Zay Flowers to kind of be that top tier receiver. And there are some reasons to poke holes in some of their games. So where does the run on receiver start, and does one of those players fall to the Chiefs? That's kind of the big question for me, and I think it kind of, I think it dictates how the rest of the draft goes for this team.
When you speak of those receivers, I think they are an interesting product. There could be some that falls. If you look at that tier one of wide receivers you just named here, which one do you think has the highest likelihood that they could fall to the back part of round one, fall to where the Chiefs could take them? Is there anyone in particular you think has the highest chance to fall into the Chiefs' lap and kind of be somebody they can snag unexpectedly based on just them falling on draft night?
Well, I mean, it may not even be unexpected. I think there's a chance that a Quentin Johnston out of TCU is available to them at 31. I look at them with, he's a quality football player. He makes a lot of people miss. He's good against man coverage. He's big. But he's not an elite athlete relative to, some others at the position. He has inconsistent hands. As a route runner, he's not as developed or advanced, but there's just so many intriguing traits. And so he's a very raw prospect that I think has a chance to be available to the Chiefs. I think he's the best bet if I was going to ask if you were asking of those four.
For the Chiefs, we obviously know, as we're talking here, wide receiver is going to be a spot of need, and it's somewhere that, we think that might be the area they might target in round one, or at least with a high value draft pick coming up in the draft. The other two spots that at least intrigue me of what they could do, whether it be at the edge position or on the offensive line, if you had to, between those two spots, what would you think is the higher need for the Chiefs to address in the draft? Would it be an edge rusher and adding someone to the edge room, or do you think a higher target is they need to find somebody to draft with some high upside for that offensive line?
The Chiefs have really good players along their offensive line at 4 of the 5 positions already. So I think it's edge, even though I'm totally content getting greedy at the tackle position if you get good value to fall. If a Darnell Wright out of Tennessee were to fall to the Chiefs and he's there at right tackle, I would be okay with it. But when I look at the edge position, they've got George Karlaftis and Charles Omenihu he's locked up for the next 2 seasons, but you need to continue to load up on the edge position. Mike Dana's in a contract year. If they sign a veteran, it's probably a 1-year deal. Continuing to add bodies into that rotation is always going to be a valuable strategy. And the good news for the Chiefs is I think there's a lot of edge players that fit the profile that the Chiefs typically prefer at the defensive end position, which means, there could be, there could be a good player that falls to them, at the end of the round one, but there could be, positions early in the draft around, 63 or 95 they might be able to grab too.
And Swanson is my guest, covers the Chiefs for the KC Sports Network, and does some fantastic work over there on the KC Sports Network with the entire gang over there. You can follow Kent on Twitter at Kent_Swanson. Moving to the current roster the Chiefs have and some of the moves they've made here in this offseason, Kent. the Chiefs have a new left tackle now, and adding Juwan Taylor and what he can kind of bring to this team. What did you think of the Juwan Taylor signing, and how do you feel he will fit flipping from the right side to the left side for the Chiefs and protecting that blind side for Patrick Mahomes?
Immense talent. We had a first round grade on Juwan Taylor coming out of the draft. I believe the first draft guy we ever did. We had a first round grade on Juwan Taylor. The traits are undeniable. The feet are great. The requisite length. He's not necessarily the most powerful blocker in the run game, but he possesses, a lot of quality traits and good movement skills that you love to see. And as pass heavy as the Chiefs are, Juwan Taylor, he makes a ton of sense. As far as the transition to the left tackle position, I'm really not that worried. Some people are talking about it, but here's the thing: the Chiefs have done this already. They've helped usher in a new left tackle switching from the right tackle position, or they've helped continue to develop twice already in the Andy Reid tenure, Andy Heck tenure. Eric Fisher started his career as a right tackle, moved to left tackle. Orlando Brown Jr. didn't have a ton of snaps at the left tackle position before the Chiefs acquired him and made, helped him develop further into the left tackle position. So I don't really have a ton of concerns about their ability to handle it. They know how to protect a left tackle. They know how to help a left tackle because they had to do a lot last year with Orlando Brown Jr. anyway.
Sticking with the offensive line here, you talked about it. They have 4 of 5 positions with very good talent. The aforementioned Taylor, and then, of course, the fantastic interior trio of Joe Thuney, Creed Humphrey, and Trey Smith. Right tackle is a spot that is kind of an open, nebulous area, but they have some options to fill it in. As far as to my understanding, it's kind of Lucas Niang's job at the moment to try and win throughout the course of training camp. Looking at the right tackle spot the Chiefs need to fill, is it somebody where you think Lucas Niang is going to be able to take it and run with it, or is there someone else you think through the course of training camp in the offseason that the Chiefs might install as their right tackle come week 1 in September?
So a few names you could look at. You could look at Prince Tiga Winogo, who is an offensive tackle that was drafted in this league, and if it weren't for some knee issues, would probably have been drafted higher and given more opportunities. But I think there's just a little bit of concern about his reliability, which might make it a little bit harder for him to secure that tackle position. But he's got great movement skills, and he's a quality football player. You look at Darian Kennard from last year. There's been a little bit of him kicking inside. He started as a tackle at Kentucky, so I'm sure he'll probably be one of the guys that is competing with Lucas Niang. But I anticipate Niang's going to win this thing out when it's all said and done. And I think the interesting thing is Lucas Niang actually had to play a snap in the Super Bowl at the right tackle position. The Chiefs tried that Pokemon play with Andrew Wiley, where he was a tackle eligible. He had to come off the field on 3rd and goal in the red zone in the 4th quarter, and the Chiefs trusted Lucas Niang enough in such a crucial down to step in there and play right tackle after moving Andrew Wiley into that tackle position. He couldn't tackle eligible position. He couldn't come back in for a play. So there's some trust there. It seems like that. I think this has always been there were hopes and plans for him to be an active member of this offensive line in the past, and injuries have kind of kept him from doing that. I don't really foresee a big competition. I think Lucas Niang, unless the Chiefs are to address the tackle position early in the draft, I think he's your starting right tackle.
That's been kind of my feel as well for what's going to happen at right tackle. Kent, moving into the rest of this roster, I talked to this earlier on today's show. 10 rookies the Chiefs had a part of this team last year, and among the 10 draft picks, it was just a great overall draft. 6 of these guys are who I would label as some level of starters for the Chiefs, even moving into year 2. Obviously, Isaiah Pacheco, George Karlaftis, Trent McDuffie, but also Jalen Watson, Sky Moore, and Brian Cook. You look at any of these rookies, so those aforementioned 6, and even guys like Joshua Williams or Leo Chanel, any of those guys that were rookies last year going into year 2, who do you think makes the biggest step from year 1 to year 2 and really shows out in their second year with the Kansas City Chiefs?
Ooh, so maybe pick one's tricky because I feel
you can pick more than one
good.
if you want, Ken. If you can pick more than one if you would like.
Okay, well, let's just do this. I think you saw Sky Moore, Brian Cook, Leo Chanel, Joshua Williams, Jalen Watson all take big steps late in the season. And this isn't even talking about Trent McDuffie and George Karlaftis, who I think played great. But I think, Sky Moore gets his first touchdown of his career in the Super Bowl. He's going to be needed in a bigger role. Brian Cook, the lights started coming on for him late in the season. You saw him make a great play on the football in the AFC Championship game, made a big play. He looks like he's playing a lot better. Leo Chanel saved the best game of his career to this point for the Super Bowl. He was really good in the Super Bowl. And I know, Dallas Goedert, reached over him and made that play, that catch, but the coverage was outstanding for a guy as big as he is. Leo Chanel's athleticism is starting to shine in a big way. You saw him getting downhill in the run game, playing with violence and physicality that he, claims he wanted to. All that stuff was really working for him in a big way. Joshua Williams, same thing. Second half of the season, things started picking up, started figuring things out a little bit more, started to get trusted, had a great Super Bowl. And then Jalen Watson had 2 interceptions in the Super Bowl or in the playoffs. Like the thing that's so cool about this is we didn't list a single first round pick, but and we didn't list Isaiah Pacheco, who had 1,000 all-purpose yards. This group is just, the arrow is pointing up. They got early contributions from some guys in that draft class, but then they saw a bunch of other players starting to pick things up as the season went on. And, the Chiefs needed that to win the Super Bowl. And that's what's so cool too, is, they bet on these young guys, and these young guys paid off for them because they were all big factors in their Super Bowl. The arrow's pointing up this entire draft class. It could be, when it's all said and done, just one of the best draft classes of the last decade.
Every time I look back on that draft class from last year, Ken, I'm just as amazed as you are with how great some of these players did, and especially for some of those later round picks as well. Wide receiver has been the talk of Chiefs. I'll call it Chiefs Kingdom and Chiefs Twitter and just everything around the Chiefs. It's all been wide receiver, with some of the guys being let go and being chosen to let walk. Guys like Juju Smith-Schuster, guys like Mecole Hardman getting let go at the prices they got let go at. I know you at the same level are kind of, willing to. Brett Veach has a plan. We're not going to overreact to what the Chiefs are doing. What do you think is the plan for the Chiefs coming at the wide receiver spot? Is it as simple as they're comfortable with what they have, they'll draft one dude and we'll go forward? Or do you think something more could be cooking for the Chiefs that they'll get to down the pipeline?
That's the big question, right? I think that's easily the biggest question of this offseason so far, is how comfortable and confident are they in the receiving core? Like, I do genuinely believe that they think that Kadarius Toney is going to take a step. Hope he doesn't get hurt while taking that step. Sky Moore, I believe that they think the arrow's pointing up for him. But at the same time, I think that you're looking at how they've approached the free agency group. They tried to get Juju Smith-Schuster back, but they had a line that they were willing to draw. They were willing to draw at a certain number. They weren't willing to give Juju Smith-Schuster the kind of money that the Patriots gave him, and it really wasn't that much money. So, I think that there is, and I think this is why they might be hemmed into the receiver position a little bit early in the draft, is they clearly have a defined line on what they're willing to pay for certain guys, and they're not going to be aggressive over that number to make sure that they're acquiring somebody. So it's a little bit scary on the outside looking in, here it being the March 31st, about to turn the page to April, and the receiver position seems kind of unfinished. But at the same time, look, they've got 6 months to address the receiver position. There's going to be veterans that are going to get cut. There's a draft that's still potentially going to bring one to them. So I think the plan is patience and discipline, and it's kind of scary for outside looking in, but they've got a good pulse on what's available and what's not, and they've got a good pulse on the market, better than we do.
All right, Kent, my final 2 questions for you, my 2 for the road here. First things first, for the Chiefs, you're in the role of Brett Veach and Andy Reid here. You're on the clock. It is your call to make. Who are you drafting at 31st overall for the Chiefs coming up in the 2023 draft?
If Quentin Johnston's there, I'm absolutely taking him. If it's not one of the top 4 receivers, that we kind of mentioned, I'm looking at, maybe in the backyard, Felix Anudike-Uzomah. I think that's another name to kind of keep an eye on as well. I think he would make a lot of sense as well.
Felix Anudike-Uzomah is the one as well that I've kind of been with there and seeing what the Chiefs will do. And if he's there, I think he fits all that mold for the Chiefs and what and what they will try to do coming forward in 2023. And secondly, here, my last question for you. When the Chiefs play this next season, they're going to have, different thoughts at wide receiver. Kadarius Toney or Sky Moore? As of now, who do you think finishes the year as I'm not going to say either one of them is the top wide receiver, but out of those two, which one do you think has the better overall year for the Chiefs? Health being equal, so not accounting if there's injury history to either one of the two. Between those two guys, who do you think can end up having the better year for the Chiefs coming up?
Health being equal, it's going to be Kadarius Toney. If Kadarius Toney plays 17 games and Sky Moore plays 17 games, it will be Kadarius Toney. I think you've already seen him get more acclimated in the offense than Sky Moore has to this point. And I think there's just a dynamic ability that was the reason that he was a first-round pick. So give me Sky Moore, or give me Kadarius Toney. I'm sorry. Yeah.
I really, really hope we can see a fully healthy season of Kadarius Toney. Kent, I'm right there with you. His talent, his ability is off the chart. It should be fantastic and great. Kent, thank you so much, my friend, for joining us. Have a great rest of the day, and look forward to seeing the KC Draft Guide when that drops here coming up before the draft.
Absolutely. Hey, yeah, go to gum.co/KCSN23 if you want that, or check out my Twitter. You can pre-order it there.
Awesome. Thanks, Kent. Have a good day, man.
Thanks.
That is Kent Swanson of the KC Sports Network. Truly, this is not shameless plug hour. This is truly the KC Draft Guide is a fantastic tool, a fantastic resource. Check it out. They do some great work over there. It's in-depth coverage. It's the greatest thing. If you are into drafting, into mock drafts, into knowing players, into all of that stuff, because I know some of you out there are, pick it up. It is great content for anyone in your life with the KC Draft Guide. It's a great resource over there. We're going to take a quick timeout and wrap up the 1 o'clock hour. Mic'd Up coming up next. Wrapping up the final hour of Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW. And listen, I get it. The Royals lost yesterday. That stunk. But even so, I want to be positive about the Royals going forward. So we're going to give away some Royals tickets. I'm going to take caller number 5 in honor of the 5 walks the Royals had yesterday, which is a positive point for the offense yesterday. Caller number 5, 785-272-9429. you will win some tickets to a Royals game of your choice coming up at home sometime this year. 785-272-9429. I will take caller number 5 for some Royals tickets coming up. I get it. The Royals were a bummer yesterday, but it is still fun to go to the K. At the bare minimum, as Jake and I always say, at the bare minimum, it is a fun experience to go to. It's fun just to experience the ballpark. It's a great time. Even if the product is sometimes a bummer, there's some fun teams coming to town this year. So caller number 5, 785-272-9429. Some Royals tickets to a game of your choosing can be yours. Coming up in the 2 o'clock hour of Mic'd Up, K-State had their pro day today. I'm going to look at some of the numbers from their pro day, and more importantly, just which guys either could have benefited from a good performance and where some of the draft prospects might lie for K-State's players. We got a little K-State football action. We haven't had that in a while. We're going to preview the Final Four. I know there's not some big teams in it, but how fun can it be that we have 4 non-common teams in the Final Four this year? I think that'll be fun as well. And then we'll also wrap up our look at opening day for the Royals and begin a little preview into their games coming up tomorrow and Sunday, taking on the Minnesota Twins. And can the Royals find a way to get a victory in one of these 2 games? Or heck, maybe they win 2 in a row and end up winning the series. As always, you're welcome to join in on the show on our text line 785-272-9429. You're also always welcome to jump in on the comment section of our YouTube live stream over at youtube.com, and Sports on 580 is our YouTube channel. The 2 o'clock hour of Mic'd Up is coming up after this. Time for the final hour of Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW. Fulton Cast here with you to take us home for not even just the final hour of the show today. Final hour of the shows this week. Gang, the week's over. It's Friday. I don't know about the rest of you. I'm very excited for the weekend because it should be relaxing and better. And also, speaking of it's the final something of somethings, it's the final hour of the final show for the final day of the month of March. We next come with you. It will be April 3rd. We'll be in the good old month of April as 2023 continues to jet right on by. Well, thank Ken Swanson for joining me at the bottom of the 1 o'clock hour. It's great to talk Chiefs in the NFL draft and all the great things that have been going on in Kansas City and all the great things at the KC Sports Network. For the Chiefs and company, if you want to listen back to that, go to our website, 580wibw.com, podcast page, hover over it, click on Mic'd Up. You can listen to an hour-by-hour breakdown of this show and yesterday's show and the day before that and the day before that and a bunch of our old shows. You can always listen back to it on our podcast page on 580wibw.com. Want to give a congratulations to Gary, who was the winner of our Royals tickets. If you didn't win this time, don't worry. There's a lot of Royals games coming up. We'll be giving away tickets all season long, so just keep listening, and we'll always try to find a way to get you to win here on Mic'd Up with Jake and Fulton. You can remember coming up in this hour, we're going to look at K-State's Pro Day, just some interesting numbers that came out of the Pro Day, as many were in attendance, and how'd that go for different K-State players. And then also just look at just some of these players and what their draft profile would be. Are there any good fits? Where will they go? More importantly, any of them good fits for the Kansas City Chiefs? We'll take a look at some of K-State's pro potential with their athletes coming up this hour as well. We're going to preview the Final Four. It starts tomorrow with a matchup between Florida Atlantic and San Diego State. That will be up first, and the second matchup between UConn and Miami will be up second. Going to look at those matchups, give my thoughts on both of them, and overall, what's it like having a Final Four with this type of assemblage of teams in it, and what does it mean for the future of college basketball as a whole? We'll get to that as well, and we'll give our final thoughts on the Royals and their opening loss to the Minnesota Twins and preview their upcoming matchups this weekend against the Twins on Saturday and Sunday. As always, if you want to be a part of the show, hop in on our text line. 785-272-9429 is that text line number, 785-272-9429. You can also jump in on the comment section of the YouTube live streams. Go to youtube.com. Sports on 580 is the YouTube channel. Subscribe if you have not. We would appreciate it. And you can jump in the comment section as well. But to begin this final hour on the final day of the month of March for the final mic'd up of the month of March, K-State had their pro day today. And outside of just the numbers, there were a lot of people in attendance for K-State's pro day today. There were scouts from all 32 teams at K-State's pro day today. That was fantastic to see so many people there turning up for so many of these performances for these players. There were 32 scouts from all 32 teams, not 32 scouts exactly. Scouts from all 32 teams in attendance today. Also including a report that there was a CFL scout there as well. So that's always fascinating. I'll be honest. I didn't know the CFL sent scouts to pro days. It makes sense, but I didn't know that. So that has happened as well. One of the biggest news and notes from the pro day was the 40 times that players ran. 40 times are always the biggest things for players for both the combine and their pro days going into the NFL draft. And there were some intriguing pro day times. Ekaboido ran a 4.37 unofficial. These are all unofficial based on several stopwatches and some averages. Ekaboido, a 4.37. Josh Hayes had a 4.45. Juice Vaughn, anywhere between a 4.5 and a 4.55. About somewhere in the 4.6 for Adrian Martinez as well. So just some good performances. Intriguing enough, Felix Anudike-Uzomah, who it could be a first-round draft pick for the Kansas City Chiefs, as Ken Swanson and I noted when we chatted at the bottom of the 1 o'clock hour, we thought, if the Chiefs want an edge guy, and I mean, even if he's there at 31 at different spots too, in second round even, Felix Anudike-Uzomah would be a good pickup for the Chiefs and fits their scheme as well. I mean, I've seen different mock drafts now. We'll get into a little tease here. Mock Draft Monday is back starting Monday. Jake and I'll start looking into those. Felix Anudike-Uzomah would be a good pickup for the Chiefs if he could actually fall to them and be in some of those spots. We'll look at that as well. But interesting, he did not run a 40-yard dash at his pro day. He did impress in some of the agility drills, the cone drills, the shuttles, things like that. All those variety of things that he does. He was looking impressive in those as well. Which goes into my overall thoughts and what I wanted to look at from K-State's pro day today, which was where would some of these guys potentially get drafted? And I want to be clear, I'm just one man. I cannot go over there's so many players and so many nuances. We can't cover everybody. There's no disrespect to any guy I don't name. I hope all of them get opportunities at the next level. But sometimes you have to pinpoint your focus on where you want to go for a variety of things. And so I'm going to try and pinpoint the focus a little bit here in this conversation. Number one, we're talking about pro prospects for the K-State Wildcats. Felix Anudike-Uzomah is going to be where you must start, because he is the guy, I think, with the best physical tools and some good college production to where he has a chance of being drafted very highly for a team. He's a big guy, big, long dude at defensive end, was able to put up a lot of good numbers at K-State in his, time at K-State with the Wildcats and looked well. Like I said, there's been some mocks now that are moving him into the first round with a first round grade. It'd be at the back end of the first round, or he's being looked as a high second round pick. That's a great spot for Felix Anudike-Uzomah. I hope he can land with one of the better run organizations, at least from a standpoint of, being able to maximize his talents and development as well. Felix Anudike-Uzomah, I think the best pro potential overall of any of these K-State players. That's not a slight to any of the other guys. I just think he has such the great physical tools, and he plays that such premium position. I think he can really stand out in the NFL. Another two spots I wanted to look at back in the defensive backfield. Echo Boydo and Julius Brents, man, I think they both will have a chance to really carve themselves out some nice NFL careers. As I noted, Echo Boydo was running really well at the pro day. His unofficial average, based on several different people's timing, was about a 4.37 40. One stopwatch had him at a 4.28. This is why we say things are unofficial. But Echo Boydo, good speed, shows some real good skills for K-State this year, really performed well. I think Echo Boydo will be a steal for whoever gets him in the draft, because I think if I had to, make it a guess, not really a guess, but make a prediction, a thought, kind of best thoughts here, I think he could go somewhere in the middle rounds, maybe be a day 2 pick or a high day 3 pick. There are definitely some traits that, doesn't flash for some of the actual on-ball coverage traits, but I think he has the physical skills that some guys with some teams really prefer. And I think Echo Boydo is going to be a nice pickup for whatever team grabs him and can carve himself out a nice role as a defensive back on one of these NFL rosters. And then Julius Brents, man, he tested out like crazy. I mean, like crazy did Brents test out at the NFL Combine, was just doing some great work in the athletic drills, put up those great numbers, those great athletic score numbers. I think he could be about a 3rd round draft pick for somebody coming up in the NFL draft. He's a long corner. He can play physically. He can run with most wide receivers. I think he can run with them well. Be a good man contesting at the catch point. I think he has a very nice pro potential as well. So I think Julius Brents and Echo Boydo would also have some very fascinating, pro careers set up for them going forward. And then there's Deuce Vaughn, K-State's star player the past several years, the guy that, people came to the Bill to see, that we loved watching play, that had, one of the great K-State running backs to be, at the school. And there's been a lot of questions, at least, from people I know. I've gotten a lot of, questions and thoughts and asked about, where would Deuce get drafted? Where would he go at the NFL level? His size is always going to hurt him, being at about 5'5", 5'6". Him being such a small back is always going to be a thing put against him by some teams. But for a small dude, he's very well built, very strong, still only about 165, 170 pounds. So again, not a big dude. There's always that question of how well does a smaller player hold up to the rigors of the NFL? But this is when I always go. I mean, people have those same questions about Darren Sproles, and he carved himself out a very nice career in the NFL. There are not many as small as Deuce Vaughn is that have made it to the NFL, but there are small running backs who have made some good performances and have had some good careers in the NFL. Based on the position he plays and the physical makeup, I think Deuce is going to fall all the way to a day 3 pick. I think he has better talent than that. I think he could be, if a running back needy team really wanted to take a chance, he could be a 3rd round pick. I think so. Again, positional value is also what matters here. I've made my stance on drafting running backs very well known, even as great as Bijan Robinson is. I know I've seen some mocks with Bijan Robinson as a 1st round draft pick. I wouldn't even draft him in the 1st round, probably, because running backs as 1st round picks, I've just kind of turned away from as positional value. But Deuce is 4.5 40, shows that he has good speed, but it's not that elite speed. And I think that might, be taken into account as well. But I think he even has some good pro potential. But the fact that K-State, with that roster last year, I mean, you got 4 dudes that I think guarantees will get drafted. I really do. Physically, Dake Uzama is going to get drafted. I really think Deuce Vaughn will get drafted. He's one of the ones that I feel, even if it's in the 5th or the 6th round, someone's going to take a chance on him. I mean, just such a talented runner, and what he's able to do as a pass catcher as well adds such versatility to him that I think someone will take a chance on him as well. And then I think Julius Brents and Echo Boydo also get a chance as well to be drafted and show off for an NFL team. And that's kind of like the be all end all, thesis to take away from this all is, man, K-State had a special season with a special team, and it's fun to look back on it and remember it and think there's, some of those fun moments that K-State had and how well they performed and what they were able to do because of the fact of, we're talking about guys and the fact that the pro day was so well attended. The the fact that all these NFL scouts were at K-State's Pro Day, that so many people were in attendance. That's where this team has moved to for K-State, and how great that roster was, is they have so many talented players that NFL teams like, yes, we need that guy on our roster. We think that guy can help us at the next level. And, K-State's had some very talented players come out of their school and their history for a while. But sometimes I think even those great players have often been underlooked. We use Tyler Lockett as an example all the time for Kansas State. Jake and I both agree he's one of the most underrated wide receivers in the NFL. Even when he came out of K-State, didn't have a lot of fanfare. It was like, oh yeah, Tyler Lockett will probably be fairly good, but we were all like, oh, this kid's going to be special, man. And he's turned in a great NFL career thus far. And it's those things that I'm happy to see, that at least for this year and how talented these guys are, that the NFL is recognizing it. That it's not a traditional thing of like, oh, well, yeah, they're great players, but, they played at K-State. It wasn't one of these big marquee, SEC programs. That K-State, with the great season they had, that their players are being recognized for their talent level and how well that they played. That, I think, is a nice departure and a great thing to realize from K-State's Pro Day, and how well it was attended today, and all the coverage around it, all the fanfare around it, and the fact that these guys who played so well are not going to be maybe underlooked or not focused on as much simply because they went to Kansas State. That's the best thing that I can see going forward, is the fact that these players are getting all the respect and notoriety and recognition that rightfully that they deserve. That sometimes guys out of K-State and other schools in the Big 12 that aren't Oklahoma and Texas have sometimes not been afforded or have not gotten, because they're not those big brand names that ESPN and the bigger, networks all always gravitate to. So it's nice to see these guys getting recognition. I think we'll hear a lot of K-State players' names called on the NFL draft in Kansas City coming up at the end of the month of April. It's going to be a lot of fun. And the fact that it's in Kansas City, in this general area, it should be a lot of fun to hear those K-State guys get their names called as well. Well, they're our first time out here on the final hour of My Day. When we come back, the Final Four has some interesting teams in it. I'll let you know what I think of the matchups. More importantly, what has it been like having a Final Four that maybe is not being covered as much because there's not a lot of blue bloods in it? We'll take a look at that coming up next. As I bring up college basketball in the Final Four here on Mic'd Up, this is some great timing for some college basketball news that just got dropped. A big name in college hoops has hit the transfer portal. This is per Jeff Goodman. Michigan center Hunter Dickinson has reportedly put his name in the transfer portal. Interesting. I am fascinated by this. Hunter Dickinson will probably get a decent look in the transfer portal. Was a pretty good player at Michigan. Big man, about 7 foot tall, big body, can play at the rim. Also can step out and shoot the three. I've always been kind of underwhelmed with Hunter Dickinson as he's played at Michigan. Like, I think he's been a very fine player, but nothing that's ever stood out to me of like, oh my goodness, this guy's one of the best players in college basketball. It's never really been a thing that's really pulsated with me. Like, I think wherever he goes, he will be an improvement for somebody. I think he can play at the high major level and play well. But that is an interesting name that is at the transfer portal just now here this afternoon. Is that Hunter Dickinson, the Michigan center, has hit the transfer portal. He will be leaving Ann Arbor and finding a new home to play for. Sticking with college basketball, though, here on Mic'd Up, the Final Four, men's Final Four, to be more specific, begins tomorrow afternoon and evening. The first matchup of the day will be Florida Atlantic taking on San Diego State in what will turn into a rock fight because San Diego State turns quite literally every game they ever play into a gigantic rock fight. And then the nightcap will be the matchup between Miami and UConn. And thinking about this and kind of seeing the coverage of the Final Four coming up this weekend, like, I know part of the reason in this area, we have not been tuned as much to the Final Four is none of the local teams are in it. KU and K-State aren't in the Final Four. So we kind of tune it out a little bit. My other thought is this. What kind of is the impact that there's no real traditional blue blood, as it were, in this Final Four? I mean, 3 of these teams are making their debut in the Final Four. Miami's never been to a Final Four in school history. San Diego State's never been here. Florida Atlantic has never been here. UConn has the most titles in the new millennia, and they're back in the Final Four trying to win their first one since 2014. But even then, as we kind of noted with Brendan on Crosstalk earlier this week, they've always kind of fall off at points and just have periods where they go dormant. And so I find it a little fascinating to me because and I guess, this is kind of my thought with it. We as a sports culture at times appreciate when we get these dynasties that happen and we try to appreciate constant winners and repeats and these top tier teams. But often it seems like we discuss about how we want something new. We want something fresh. We want something different. And that's what this Final Four is. This Final Four is as out there, chaotic, kind of what's happening of a Final Four we've had in years. And yet there are, I don't want to, generalize the population here, but what seemed like a lot of people who have just kind of gone, this Final Four is whatever. And it's like, is this not what you all want? Like, is this not what the sports public wants in a Final Four that doesn't have your traditional blue bloods, that doesn't have, for the upteenth time, Duke and North Carolina playing, or, or having to see Kentucky, or, seeing Villanova yet again in the Final Four, things like that. Is this not the thing that people usually came up for of wanting something different? The college football playoff, we talk about all the time. There was that run of, Alabama and Clemson always playing. And it seemed to me, at least what I was seeing, is people were sick of it. They were tired of it. They wanted something new. They wanted something different. Well, that's what you're getting in college basketball, and yet it hasn't gotten that look, that fanfare, that, pomp and circumstance of like, oh, we're seeing something that we've never seen before. Like, there is a 75% chance, doing this at flat rates here, without, waiting for how good teams are. There's a 75% chance we see a first-time ever national champion in college basketball this year. That we see somebody hoist the trophy, rain the confetti down of a team that's never, ever, ever been here before and gotten this opportunity as a national champion. Isn't that a thing we usually want to see? Isn't that usually a thing that we talk about of rooting for? We want to relish the chances of like, oh my goodness, this historic thing's happening. We love watching new things, history-making things. And yet we're getting that in this Final Four, and it's just seemingly to go down by the wayside. And I'm fascinated by that. And I get part of the problem is those teams involved trying to win their first title. Like Miami in basketball has never been, a real powerhouse. And as far as the school goes, as national prominence, they're kind of They've really dropped off in the 2000s and into the 2010s and into the 2020s here. And then you look at a team, like I've said, about UConn, that, they've won, the most national titles since 1999. They have 4. They have 4 national titles in that span. No one is close to that. And yet, everyone's just like, UConn's here, whatever. And it's like, and I get it, as we've noted, they kind of just go in these lull periods, like they won the national title last in 2014 with Shabazz Napier. And then have kind of been bad up until this year, which is fascinating. Maybe that's a factor. And then I get it on the other side. Florida Atlantic and San Diego State, 2 mid-major teams, which, as I've said, is that not exciting enough? That not 1, but 2 mid-majors are in the Final Four? That 2 mid-majors that have never been to this stage are going to get an opportunity to try and win their, like, one of those 2 teams, either Florida Atlantic or San Diego State, one of those 2 teams is going to be playing for a national title on Monday night and going to be 40 minutes away from their first national title in school history. I have not been able to comprehend the lack of fanfare for this because, I'm excited in a realm of, I get it. The basketball is not going to be that top tier, elite level, all the stars kind of thing we've grown accustomed to. I get that. I really do. But you're still going to see some fun basketball outside of San Diego State. And I get that for San Diego State. They make every game into a barroom brawl, which for a lot of people isn't pretty and isn't fun. I get it. I really do. They slow things down. They make everything very physical. They keep every game, barely in the 60s. I get that people might not want to watch that. But at the same time, the fact that they're playing for their first national title, I feel like should warrant something of a look, something of excitement. Same thing for FAU. FAU and Dusty May's team are really fun to watch. To me, that's a fun team to watch play. They play fast. They're such a deep team with these rotations and how they play. We saw them when they played K-State. That was a fun team to watch play. I don't get why that isn't getting more of a, they've won 35 games. That's crazy. If they could win their first national title, they're going to win 37 games in a season. They would go 37-3 over a 40-game stretch in a college basketball season. That is absurd. Why does it feel like we're not recognizing that more? Miami and Jim Larrañaga is close to getting a national title. Jim Larrañaga is one of the great, one of the more enjoyable old timer coaches. Jim Larrañaga has taken a lot of fun teams to the dance, and now he's here with Miami, and he is one of the old guard who actually is evolving with the game. We talk about Roy Williams and, the way he's retired, Jay Wright choosing to retire, Mike Krzyzewski choosing to retire, all the old guard being like, you know what, we're not dealing with all this crazy stuff. Jim Larrañaga's embraced it. Jim Larrañaga is a legitimately enjoyable person, a good coach, a really good coach to watch run his team. Why? That's just, it serves back to the overall thing for me. I get UConn's trying to win a national title again, and, maybe that has its own thing to it about, they've been here before. I think, you can love or you can hate Dan Hurley. I get the people who might not like Dan Hurley for some of the way he can act and kind of the personality. I get it's not for everybody. The Athletic put out a great piece on Dan Hurley and what he's been through in his life, part of that, Hurley, dynasty in New Jersey and all that. it gives you newfound respect for Dan Hurley. That guy might win a national title. Like, my overall sticking point here, the larger point to this essential rambling that I'm doing here is, even though there are not marquee names in this Final Four coming up, there are still stories worth watching and worth following and worth being entertained by. Because all 4 teams for me have something that you can gravitate towards, and that I implore, if you like watching college basketball, to watch these games and gravitate towards them. Florida Atlantic is first title in school history they're chasing. Would get to 37 wins, which is absurd. Dusty May, a great young coach, getting a national title. That's a great story to follow. San Diego State, a team of old heads, the oldest team in college basketball, San Diego State. Those veteran guys getting the first title in school history, that's something worth paying attention to. For Miami, Jim Larinaga winning a national title. Miami winning their first national title in school history. That's something I think they can be gravitated towards. UConn, a 5th national title since 1999. Again, extending their lead for the most since 99 amongst any program. That's crazy. Adama Sanogo is very fun to watch play basketball, and a dominant big man inside. And like I said, the more I've learned, I've really started to, really, kind of feel for Dan Hurley and the kind of guy he is and the kind of coach that he is. Seeing Dan Hurley get a national title, I think, would be a nice thing as well. So I think these are 2 fun games. Looking at both of these matchups with like Florida Atlantic and San Diego State, I think the Aztecs slow this down again. I think they turn this into another one of those classic rock fights. Florida Atlantic turns the ball over a lot. As much as I would love Dusty May's team to get a chance to play for a national title, I think it'd be a great story. I think they run short. I think San Diego State wins it because that defense has just been such an interesting thing this year. So if I had to pick one of the 2, I'm picking San Diego State. I think they would probably get the victory over Florida Atlantic and head to the national title game on Monday night in Houston. And then in our nightcap of Miami and UConn, like, man, that's going to be a fun game. Adama Sanogo banging down low there with Miami. You get to see Isaiah Wong play ball. Nigel Pack has been on a great heater in his first year with Miami and the way he's played. Seeing that Miami offense trying to take on a little bit of a different structured UConn offense, and again, a pretty good UConn defense. That game should be fun. I think UConn wins it. I think it's UConn and San Diego State playing for the national title Monday night, which is such an interesting matchup for me and how I think it goes to you. But overall, if you are a fan of college basketball, I think there are more than a few things to find an enjoyment with for this weekend of games in the Final Four coming up in the Final Four tomorrow, the men's Final Four coming up tomorrow night. And I think it will be an entertaining matchup because I get it. There's not the big names. There's not the sexy names. There's not the names everyone knows. There's not the star players, who are going to be first round pick, lottery picks in the NBA. But what you have are 4 great stories that I think are really things you can fall in love with on any of these 3 teams. And every team, I think, has something about it that you could root for and go, man, I may not be like a fan of this team, but it would be pretty cool to see them get a national championship. I think we can fall in love with that. I'm kind of bummed it hasn't gotten enough coverage in the vein of that. I think we've kind of slid it away from the fact that, because there are no shiny toys in this Final Four. We just need to kind of throw it by the wayside. This was a year of college basketball of chaos, and we were getting the chaos of a Final Four. And I think it's the proper ending to this college basketball season, the way it's going to go. Should be a fun one. I think coming up on Monday when Jake and I look at the national championship game, it'll be UConn, San Diego State. But this has been a year of craziness. So who knows? There's going to be those 2 teams trying to cut down the nets in Houston coming up on Monday night. We'll take a timeout. When we come back, we're going to take a look at the Royals and their series with the Twins the rest of the weekend. The final last 20 minutes or so of Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW. Fulton Caster here with you, wrapping up the show on this Friday afternoon. The Royals lost on opening day. I wish I was incorrect in that, but that is unfortunately how things have gone on opening day. They lost 2-0 to the Minnesota Twins and are starting the year at 0-1. The good from that game was the team walked. They had 5 walks in the game. They walked more than the Twins did. That is a positive development. This team being patient, a team of young guys being patient is positive. Now, I do balance that with the simple fact that they also struck out 11 times, so that patience might not be as great as I hoped it would have been. But overall, they did find ways to try and have moments to where they were able to perform well and overall try to have a good performance against Minnesota, and hopefully they can step it up in game 2. They had some good performances out of the bullpen. That was also a positive sign for the Royals in that game. And that was some effective. Zach Greinke looked good. That Greinke looking good is an important development as well. And Carlos Hernandez and Jose Cuas looking good out of the bullpen is also a big development for this team. But I wanted to begin looking a bit towards the weekend here. The Royals have 2 matchups coming up this weekend against the Minnesota Twins. They have one on Saturday, which I'll be in attendance for. I'm going to enjoy it. I hope all of you can maybe make out to the K this weekend as well. It'll be a fun time. Weather should be nice as well, about 50, 60 degrees. Hopefully this wind calms down a little bit. That would be nice. And they have matchups on Saturday, and they have matchup on Sunday, and hopefully the Royals can try and get at least one win in those 2 games. What I wanted to look at is what is the Royals' path to trying to find a victory in their 2 games coming up this weekend? What are those things they would need to work on? One of the things above all else is that they have 2 very, very tough pitching matchups they're facing this weekend against the Twins. On Saturday, tomorrow's game, the Royals will be facing Sonny Gray for the Twins. Sonny Gray, in 10 career starts against Kansas City, is 7-2 with a 1.66 ERA. Historically, the Royals have had issues with Sonny Gray. I don't know what they're going to do here in this next game. I'm interested to see what the lineup looks like. Matt Quatraro, speaking with reporters before yesterday's game, and then really kind of all throughout the spring, kind of noted the lineup is going to be very flexible this year. You're going to see the Royals not really get pinned into one set of starting 9 and even one set of 1 through 9 through the order. Quatraro is going to be really trying move things around depending on the pitchers they're facing, depending on splits and data and what the numbers say and how each guy presents to each different handedness. That's why, the Royals wanted a guy like Matt Duffy on the bench who can play so many infield positions. That's why they wanted Nate Eaton there to maybe add a right-handed bat off the bench to help with the outfield. Nicky Lopez being off the bench as well to maybe add a different bat on the infield with what he can bring. I will be fascinated to see who all gets a different start coming up the rest of the weekend. I would not be surprised if against Sonny Gray on Saturday or Joe Ryan, who also Joe Ryan has a good career against the Royals in his brief time in the major leagues. Ryan has made 4 starts against the Royals. He's 4-0 with a 1.13 ERA in his limited time against Kansas City. I'm fascinated to see if Matt Quatraro tries to trot out Matt Duffy. Maybe Matt Duffy gets a start. Maybe Nicky Lopez gets a start. Maybe Nate Eaton, you see him play and get an opportunity against some of these guys. I am intrigued by what that's going to look like because Matt Quatraro has so openly stated that this roster and this lineup is going to be so flexible and going to be so matchup dependent. And it's going to be trying to figure out what each guy can bring to the table in these games and what they can each perform and do. I think, he's not going to. Matt Quatraro, I don't think he's going to make drastic wholesale changes after one game in which they only got 2 hits. I think he understands that this is a long season. Now, the other counterpart to that is this is Matt Quatraro's first time being a manager, being a big league manager. Does he maybe get more aggressive with the changes? Does he not let it sit as long? I don't know. We're going to see. That's what this entire year in this opening month is going to be about for me, is learning what type of manager Matt Quatraro is. What will he do to try and navigate slumps in games and trying to get wins on the board and trying to find a spark on the offense or the pitching staff or things like that. What does he want to try and do with all those different things? Because that's probably what he's thinking about right now is, after a 2-hit performance from his offense on day 1, what does he try and do here for game 2 and try to figure out what piece is missing? What spark could he search for the offense in game 2 that could really get behind it, and seeing what he could do in that matchup would be fascinating. Does it come in the form of Matt Duffy or Nicky Lopez or Nate Eaton getting in at bat, or does it just come in the form of reshuffling that same 1 through 9 and putting different guys in different spots to maybe give them a different look from these different pitchers, or give the pitchers that the Royals are facing a different look as well? I'm intrigued to see what they will do against 2 pitchers that, historically have given the Royals fits. And the hard part we look at historically is, all those lineups aren't always the same. And there's a lot of a sample size in what happens. But overall, these are 2 very good pitchers for the Minnesota Twins, and Sonny Gray and Joe Ryan coming up here. And that was one of the reasons I talked about when we made our MLB predictions on Wednesday, that I said the Twins would win the division, is that was their thing last year with starting rotation, was it needed to be improved. And man, did they improve it. The fact that, Sonny Gray and Joe Ryan can be further down in the starting rotation order because they added something as simple as Pablo Lopez to the rotation is important. And I think will make Minnesota better. So this is a tough series for those to start with, but I still think they could find a way to get at least one win this weekend, because they competed with Minnesota in game 1. They were finding a way to compete and pitch with them and find a way to find a rhythm against their top pitcher. So I think that does give at least me hope and realization and pause for an idea that they could find a way to get a victory in game 2 or game 3. Outside of the offensive side of things, I'm intrigued by what the Royals pitchers will do this weekend as well. Jordan Lyles goes tomorrow for the Royals. He will be their starter Saturday afternoon against Minnesota. For Jordan Lyles, do you simply not get shelled? Like, I've talked about this a lot. I know my bar for Jordan Lyles is so incredibly low, and he's one of the few parts where my optimism does not sparklingly shine through. But it's, for me, Jordan Lyles, my expectation from this year is just a veteran who eats up innings, so that way there's a spot in the rotation every 5 days where you don't think the bullpen's going to have to be used a bunch. So can Jordan Lyles give you 6 innings tomorrow? Can he give you 6 innings and give up 3 to 4 runs? If he does that, that starts a roaring success. Even if the Royals still lose because of that start. If he goes 6 innings and gets the quality start of 3 runs, or even if he just gives up 4, that's a winnable game. That is a winnable game that the Royals can try to find a way to get on the board and escape with the win. And him being able, if he can go 6 innings, means you only need about 3 out of the bullpen, which is just a better spot to be in the first weekend of the season as well. So that's where I sit at with Jordan Lyles for tomorrow. Can we see that out of him? I think we can. I'm hoping by setting the bar so low that he passes over it with flying colors. But at the same time, I just don't know what to expect from a guy that historically is a very average to kind of below average guy. Like, he has an ERA over 5 in his career and over 1,300 innings. Tiger doesn't change his stripes at that point after that much of a sample size. So I don't know. But I will hold out hope that Jordan Lyles performs better than expected coming up on Saturday. And then coming up on Sunday, we get Brad Keller, who's going to make a start as well. I am very intrigued to see what happens for Brad Keller in Sunday's start. What does he try and do? What does he look like? Craig Brown and I talked about it in the 12 o'clock hour about kind of his pitch mix and what does it look like? You know, how does that sinker, that 4-seamer, that 2-seamer, that fastball of his, how does it look in game 1? And then how often does he use the curveball? Does he use the sweeper, his new slider, his sweeper that he's now developed? Because for me, we always have these moments in the offseason where guys talk about new pitches they're throwing. I mean, I remember last year's my favorite recent case of it. We heard all about Chris Bubich adding a slider all offseason. That's what he did. He added a slider. It was something new. It was something different. He didn't throw a single one in the regular season. Never did. It never showed up. And that bothers me, because if you work on something new, use it. Use it to try and make yourself better. And so I am just, all the talk for Brad Keller this offseason has been he added a curveball and he tweaked the slider to make it more of a sweeper. I am fascinated to see how often Brad Keller uses those pitches in his start coming up on Sunday, and how effective can he be. I think there is an area to where Brad Keller can be a good middle of the rotation guy for the Royals and give them some length and give them some stability and be an effective starter for the Royals. I think that role still does exist for Brad Keller. But I'm going to have to see it to believe it. That's been Jake's big thing with my optimism for the Royals, is his distempered because he needs to see it to believe it, which I don't blame him. I truly don't. I never have. And that's my thing with Keller, is I think he can perform better, and I think he can look good on Sunday, but I just need to see it. I need to see him perform. More importantly, even if he doesn't have a great outing, even if that outing he gets hit up a bit, gives up a few runs, if I just see he's trying something new and he's not being the same old Brad Keller, that's what I want to see. You know, if he gets hit up a little bit, but it's because he's trying to figure out his curveball and trying to use it. He's trying to use that sweeper, and it's just not feeling it that day. I still want to see him be different. As long as he looks like a different Brad Keller who's trying to reinvent himself in what is likely his final year in Kansas City, because he's a free agent after this year. What I want to see is just, can he show he can be a rotation guy? I think he still has it, but some of those decisions and what it'll be going forward is just kind of the big mystery when it comes to Brad Keller. But overall, I hope when we rejoin you coming up on Monday that the Royals have found a way to get at least one victory, and we can be celebrating something positive for the Royals coming up on Monday's show. Before we take our break here, we have some breaking news here at the bottom of the hour. A thing we all thought was going to happen has now officially happened. Kansas basketball guard Grady Dick has officially declared for the NBA draft. We all thought that was going to happen. We all had expected that was going to happen, but it is finally, the announcement has come. Grady Dick made it on NBA Today. Grady Dick is officially declared for the NBA draft after his one season at Kansas. He's likely going to be a lottery pick coming up in the NBA draft. But I mean, I wish nothing but the best for Grady. It's been very fun for him and what he's going to do. It's going to be a fun time, I think, for him to have a chance to be a good player in the NBA. But Grady Dick officially in the NBA draft coming up in 2023. So KU, they knew they're probably going to replace Grady Dick. Now it is confirmed they're going to have to find a way to replace his talents on the court. We'll take one final timeout. We have the mic drop coming up next here on Mic'd Up. Time for the mic drop to wrap up this week and this month of Mic'd Up. It's very simple for me. You've heard me say it all past 2 days. Baseball's back, and it delights me ever much so, and I get it. First game for the Royals this season was an absolute bummer. Getting only 2 hits, not scoring any runs. It can be a thing that does set you back in a little bit of a doom and gloom situation, believing that this team is the same old, and there's no reason to be positive ever again. And you want to expect more to start a year with a new regime, new manager, new everything. I get it. I do. That being said, it's a long season ahead. There's 161 more of these things that they got to play. Give them time. They will figure it out. Matt Quatrero will figure it out. And I really do think this team can finally start getting some positive momentum sooner rather than later. It's going to be 2 fun, great games at the K coming up on Saturday against the Twins. I think they can win at least one, and I don't think it's entirely out of the realm possibility if they can figure some things out offensively to win both of these games. It'll be close. It'll be tight. But one series does not an entire season make, nor does one loss out of 162 does an entire season make. And I think there is a way for this team to find a way forward. There were positives. We talked about the positives today. Some of the young guys looked good. They were showing some patience at the plate outside of a few strikeouts that were a big bummer. But overall, there is a way for this team to prepare for going forward. I think it'll be positive. That'll do it for my tip this week. Coming in next, you have 5 Sports with Brendan and Dan. Everyone else, have a great weekend. We'll see you Monday.